The Red Hood, probably one of my, well, no, not one of, he is my favorite DC character. Most because what I find so compelling about him is he's kind of like a foil to Batman, or he's someone who conflicts with Batman's moral code and philosophy. Which, yeah, I kind of agree with. Plus, he kind of highlights some of the stupidity of Batman, which normally doesn't get brought up a whole lot, but Red Hood does bring some of that to light. Also, I just like the fact that he was the closest thing DC has to a Punisher. Well, there's him and Vigilante, but Vigilante either kills himself or gets killed. Hard to really remember anymore. It's been years since I read up on that character. But Red Hood's also someone that I legitimately like as a person. I tend to agree with him in the debate between him and Batman. I do think there's some people that you can't help. There are some people who need to have two plugged behind the ear. There are some people you just cannot redeem. The Joker being a prime example. And plus, Jason may be a bit biased when it comes to his vendetta against the Joker, but Jason kind of has a point. I mean, it's a biased point, but a point nonetheless. And also, I just think he's a cool character and someone I can root for. And he's someone that I think kind of needs a hug sometimes. It's kind of like Darth Vader and Dracula from the Francis Ford Coppola movie. He needs a hug, is what I'm saying. He's a tragic guy. Like, not as tragic as those two, but still pretty tragic. And he's just someone I would like to see be happy, which kind of sucks about comics is because they've adopted this philosophy that the hero can never be happy. He always has to suffer. He never. It's infuriating. So I'll be going over some stuff on the Red Hood before I say what I think the takeaways are. And mostly I just wanted to do a video because I think there's some lessons to be learned from the Red Hood. Very important lessons, like, well, I'll save that for later. Anyway, let's move on. Red Hood was created as Jason Todd, the second Boy Wonder, made to replace Dick Grayson after he became Nightwing and became more involved with the Teen Titans. He had the misfortune of being made by comic book creator douchebag supreme Jerry Conway. Was very unpopular as Robin. As Red Hood, on the other hand, he would find nothing but popularity. And it's kind of hard to not see why, just by the look of him. And kind of his personality, too, is kind of attractive in a way. But that's all I just wanted to say about the creative backstory. He was not very popular. Actually, they did a poll to decide his fates. And as you can imagine, it didn't turn out well for him. Jason was born the son of, well, two nobodies. Well, one was a criminal. His father was sent to prison where he supposedly died when Jason was very young. His mother died of an overdose, supposedly. He was later found by Batman. Actually, funny story. He was found because Batman left his Batmobile parked in Crime Alley, so Jason appropriated the tire and tried to sell it. Then he came back for the other one, but Batman was waiting for him. And when confronted about it, he took a swing at Batman. A swing at him. Like, even as a kid, Jason had big balls. Like, he had some serious cojones. It's almost kind of admirable, really. Actually, no, it is admirable. Because I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind taking a swing at Batman. Just mainly so I could knock that sanctimonious grin off his face. Or what passes for a grin. Batman would ultimately train him. He became the second Robin. But he had something of a temper. In fact, as Robin, back in I can't remember exactly how much of this is still canon, but there was this one guy named Philippe who raped a woman and had killed herself. When Robin confronted him, well, Philip ended up falling off a balcony. And it's never made clear whether he was pushed or if he fell off himself. So, yeah, it's kind of never really specified, but even back then there was something dark about him, but there was some kind of restraint on it. There was a part of him that was holding it back, and for a while it seemed like he was trying to wrangle it in or rein it in, but nothing good lasts forever. And by that I mean things kind of took a turn for the worse with Jason. He had a falling out with Batman and learned his mother was still alive. He traveled to Karak where he found her, was captured by the Joker, beaten within an inch of his life with a crowbar, and left in a warehouse with a bomb about to go off. Batman got there just in time to see it go kaboom. And Jason died instantly from the explosion. He was later buried in the Wayne Cemetery, and that should have been the end of it for him. He died as he lived, being brash. Well, sort of. My knowledge of that point in his life is kind of vague, but yeah, it kind of his actions kind of came back to bite him in the ass, unfortunately, and he didn't deserve it. Also, remember when I said he was very unpopular? Well, to decide that, there was a poll done. It was like a phone-in poll, and it's believed that he just barely was voted to die. But it was also believed that some crazy person called in multiple times to say he should die, or voted he should die more than once. So, no, yeah, if you think fans today are crazy, well, I'm just gonna say fans have always had a crazy side to them, but yeah, this guy may have taken it to an extreme. Thankfully, this was not the end for the oh, what's a good word for this? The struggling sidekick. He, for reasons I just don't know anymore, but in the original canon, the reason why he came back was Superboy was trapped outside of reality, so he punched his way through. This had ripple effects, which somehow affected Jason for some reason. The ripple effects had an effect throughout time and space. One of these effects was on Jason. He woke up in his coffin, dug his way out, was hit by a car, left in a comatose state, was found by the League of Assassins or the League of Shadows, I can't remember the exact name of them, and he would mainly react through instinct. Like if he was attacked, he would dodge and attack back. The only person he wouldn't attack back against was Talia for some reason. And one day, while Raish was in the Lazarus pit, she threw Jason into it with them, and he emerged. Now, I don't know much about the current canon, but I believe in the current canon, he still was plunged into the Lazarus pit, and he came out, and he was not okay afterwards. Like, regardless of the timeline, he was not the same after he was plunged into the Lazarus pit. He was alive, but changed. To best explain this, as I've understood it, is his worst traits were brought to the surface and enhanced. So think of it this way: you're a brash guy with a temper, and those two qualities are now enhanced. It brings the worst of you out to the surface. I mean, Ray, whatever you think about the guy, at one point in his life he was a decent human being. He just spent so many dips in the Lazarus pit that all the good qualities got really buried and twisted. Jason was the same way. He still had some goodness in him, but it was twisted. Also, he always had a violent and dark side, as mentioned before, that was brought to the surface. And yeah, it wasn't good for him. He was also it didn't help that he was trained by the All Cast in the current timeline, and in the original timeline where he came back, he was trained by various underworld figures. He was taught how to use poisons, guns, And usually Jason would kill these mentors because they let him down in some way. One of them was running a kiddie slavery ring, so he killed them. So he had reasons for killing them, like he was an anti-hero. I don't know, he still is an anti-hero, but like all this is seen in the Lost Days, if you want the full context. But the point is, he was changed, and not not always for the best. Well, I think it was for the best because I think he became a more interesting character because of it. But moving on. Ultimately, Jason would emerge as a new vigilante in Gotham, known as Red Hood. The problem was, Jason had learned that after the Joker had killed him, Batman did not avenge him. He simply threw him back in prison, handed him over to the authorities, and moved on with his life. This hurt Jason emotionally. I'm not going to lie, I would be hurt too. If I had been murdered and my dad had not gotten me some justice, I would have been pissed. I would have been livid. I would have wanted revenge. So he made a plan to get back at Batman. This is also kind of spurred on by Talia, or instigated, or like she didn't do anything to stop it. Probably didn't help that in the original timeline, she was pissed at Batman because of what happened to her father, Ra's, and Batman was involved. So she encouraged this. She also gave him his new outfit that he would use, the Red Hood helmet. She also gave him a special little knife. But that's neither here nor there. He adopted the alias of the Red Hood and came back to Gotham, where he tried to take over the criminal underworld, justifying that you can't stop crime, but you can control it. He thought if he could control crime, he could control the damage it does. I mean, he wasn't entirely in the wrong there. I mean, he still wanted to stop crime, but he wasn't stopping it completely. He was mitigating it, or he wanted to anyway. At least that's what I like to think. And he had no problem with using violence, like to get some of the less prosperous drug traffickers in Gotham to obey him or fall in line. He butchered all of their lieutenants, cut their heads off, put them in a duffel bag, and delivered them to their leaders in a meeting. He also had some good lines, like when one guy said, "You know, there are easier ways to kill yourself," and then he goes, "Yeah, like yelling at the guy holding the AK-47." And yeah, he was ruthless. I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty sweet watching him work. For the context of this story, you'll want to see both The Lost Days and Batman Under the Red Hood, or just watch the Under the Red Hood animated movie. Either way, you get the full context. Sort of. With the movie, you don't get the context of why he's still alive. But again, we're going to be moving on from here. Now, something I've always liked about Red Hood, after reading this, like to give you the rest of the context, he did sort of make amends with the Bat family and move more towards them. But he's still a violent vigilante and an anti-hero, so he occasionally clashes with them. But one thing I've always kind of liked is he deals with trauma from the experience of being killed by the Joker and coming back to life. Because that has to be a traumatic experience, dying, then being revived, and having the memories of what it was like to die. Regardless of what you think happens after death, that still has to have an effect on you. Whether it's just you see nothing but darkness, or you remember hell or heaven, they'll probably leave an impression on you. This is actually something I think they did well with Rebirth, or in the Rebirth continuity. They showed Jason having hallucinations when he was in Karak, helping Artemis. He saw his younger self saying, "This is what I become. I think I was better off being dead," and Jason kind of agrees. Then again, this was him after he regained his sanity, so... But yeah, you see the consequence of Batman's continuously allowing the Joker to live, Jason has paid the price for that, of the revolving door of just the catch and release of crime that Batman has done. You see some of the negative consequences it has had on Jason. Like, he hasn't been affected too much by killing. He's able to justify that, as the people he kills deserve it. Except in Rebirth, he didn't kill people because he was operating in Gotham, and he made a deal with Batman of no killing. But that's neither here nor there. And again, we are moving on. With Red Hood, like most comic book characters, he has skills and abilities that help him in the field. He has peak physical condition, enhanced strength, enhanced reflexes, enhanced speed, enhanced stamina, high intelligence, master combatant, master martial arts, which we'll come back to, master weapon specialist, master marksman, skilled acrobat, aviation, business management, criminology, computer hacking, computer operations, disguise, escapology, genius level intellect, indomitable will, interrogation, intimidation, investigation. And returning to the martial arts, he knows Dim Mak, Kung Fu, Muay Thai, Taekwondo, and Wing Chun. I also could have sworn at one point I heard he knows Krav Maga. He's also multilingualism, occultism, peak human condition, stealth, thievery, tracking, and swordsmanship. And if I've repeated something ad nauseum or whatever, that's because I got this from two different sources when I was researching for more about him. Basically, he is one of the most deadly people in the DC universe, or he has the capacity to be. I think in time he'll become like a deadlier version of Nightwing. Like, think Nightwing but with guns. That could be Red Hood one day. And yeah, I just think all these skills and abilities make him, well, not only proficient as a vigilante, but effective as a crime fighter. And an interesting character. Actually, I kind of wish they'd do a series in the new canon where it shows where him learning all this stuff, or do flashbacks of it. But yeah, I think any character in comics needs to have a large skill set to do the things they do. Like, look, take Constantine for example. His main skill set is his intelligence, his occult knowledge, his magical abilities, and he has, I believe, some knowledge of firearms. But that's, I'm getting ahead of myself, or not ahead of myself. I'm getting off track. The point is, these characters need to have a large skill set in order to survive. That isn't true, especially for Red Hood, who has died already once, so he'd probably be interested in making sure that doesn't happen again for a long time. And, well, yeah, that's about it for the skills and abilities. As for powers, because of his time in the Lazarus Pit, there were some enhancements. Um, this gave him some magical abilities like magical negation and summoning. This allows him to summon the All Blades, so he has a form of weapon manipulation similar to, well, I guess Archer from the Fate series. He can summon swords and use them. Jason does something similar. He can summon the All Blades, or he can summon multiple variations of it and use those as well. Similar to Batman, Red Hood uses a myriad of gadgets and equipment. Now, there's the Red Hood cowl, which this later gets changed up in the Rebirth after he gets separated from his team. He has a combat knife that Talia gave him, dual pistols, which I believe are Jericho's in the Rebirth, and pocket explosives. There's also a grappling hook, smoke grenade, shurikens, tasers, weapon depots, other guns, bazookas, and the All Blades, which are the swords he can summon at any time. And I think this just helps to make him, like, along with his skills and abilities, this just helps to make him a very deadly opponent, because he's kind of like Batman in that if he prepares well enough, he can ruin your day. Because he has safe houses all over the world, apparently, where he stores weapons and keeps things prepared. So if he wanted to, he could just prepare to attack you, get all the information he needs, and yeah, fuck up your day, basically. And he's very proficient in the weapons he uses. Like, if you told me I had to fight Red Hood, I would say, no way, that's a death sentence. I'd rather fight Superman. At least Superman, with Superman, you don't have a chance of being killed. As for weaknesses, well, Jason has three in my opinion: his temper, his ideals, and he's not the strongest or smartest in the Bat family. Like, he can still be beaten. He's not as skilled as Batman or Nightwing, so he's at a disadvantage against people like them usually. He's still pretty smart though. Like, don't let me fool you. He is very smart. But his temper, and Batman's told him this a couple times. It can be his undoing if he's not careful. You saw us in Rebirth where he shot Penguin after he found out Penguin was the one who sent his father to prison where he supposedly died, and then he found out his father wasn't even buried there. His ideals can sometimes be detrimental, especially when it comes to like his kind of anger with Batman. I think that kind of bit him in the ass a little, and it caused a batarang to go slash his neck a little. And although just because he's not as skilled as the other Batman family members, that doesn't mean he's less compelling. But yeah, these are some things that can kind of come back to haunt you if you're not careful. So yeah, keep your emotions in check sometimes. When it comes to the appeal of Red Hood, I can't really speak for other people because I haven't really met many people online who are fans of the Red Hood, and I've never really talked about what they like about him. But if I had to narrow down my reason for liking him, one is he's just a cool character. I've really like his relationship with and the status within the Bat family. I like his various friendships and relationships. I like the dynamic between him and Roy Harper, Starfire, Artemis, and Bizarro. Like, I really liked that relationship between him, Artemis, and Bizarro. That was probably the best part of the Rebirth Red Hood run, is seeing him develop this friendship with them and this rapport, or rapport, whatever the word is, and just building it up because they go from being strangers to very close friends, and they didn't really exactly meet on the most ideal of circumstances, especially Artemis and Bizarro. Bizarro he kind of identified with because he saw him kind of panicking in a testing tube, and it reminded him of the time he came back to life in the Lazarus pit. And Artemis, well, it's kind of really hard to say what they bonded over. I think it was a mutual concern for Bizarro, and Roy, I'm surprised he was friends with. I thought he was kind of written annoyingly, but they were best friends. And when he died, Jason was affected by it pretty traumatically, or at least decently. And I don't think he's handled it well. Or actually, no, he's handled it pretty well. He hasn't done anything too self-destructive. There's also this fifth guy whose name I can never remember. He had the ability to turn into a giant bat. He sometimes works with him. I like his abilities, his weapon manipulation. I like his skills and talents. I look forward to see what happens with him. I enjoy seeing him progress in his career as a vigilante because I don't think he's the strongest or the best of the vigilantes in the Bat family, but I think in time he can become a good one if he has good writers who aren't trying to tear him down, like some other established characters have in the past. And I just want to see him get to the point where he's kind of like Nightwing, but with guns. That's what I think he could be one day. Um, I also like his place within the superhero and villain community. I'll touch on this later when I talk about similar characters to him, well, a similar character. But I like how it's never really made clear for me what the other heroes think of him. I know the Bat family is somewhere between they love him and accept him, but at the same time they kind of, I think they look down on him. That was the feeling I got in New 52, and that's what I sometimes get the feeling with in Rebirth, but not as much in Rebirth. And the villains, actually, I think if Red Hood was just a little more twisted, he would probably get along with the villains. Some of them have commended him for the way he does things, like KG Beast. He commends him for doing something from within, from being a willing to do things for what he believes in, or something like that. It's been a while since I read that one. I find his moral compass and complexities intriguing. I like complex characters. Don't get me wrong, I sometimes like people who are simple, like villains. I like it when they're just simply evil or they're sadistic, but complexity sometimes work. Red Hood isn't one of the examples of that. It's just another reason why he's one of my favorite comic book characters of all time and why he's the only one I actually bothered to keep up with. I like the progression of his character development because he's gone through a lot of different changes over the years since he came back from the dead. He went from being a villain to an antagonist to an anti-hero. And he's fought various people. He fought Deathstroke at one point before he had his own run. Um, and another thing I like about him is his self-esteem, because I always get the impression he does not have a high opinion of himself. Like he seems to loathe what he has become in a certain respect. I can sort of relate to that, not as a vigilante, but as a writer. I look at the stuff I write and yeah, it's not good. I don't think it's good. Other people do, I don't. So I can kind of relate to Red Hood on that level of not having the best opinion of yourself, of looking in the mirror and hating what you see. I can kind of sympathize with that. He needs therapy, basically. Not too much therapy, just enough for the self-esteem part. And I think at one point he said he gave up on himself a long time ago. So yeah, there's also that. I just like that. Like I like characters who aren't complete narcissists. Like sometimes I like characters who are narcissists, like Constantine. Other times I like characters who are either in the middle or in the very negative of they look at themselves and they see everything wrong that they hate. I sometimes like that self-loathing. Of course, now I would kind of like him just to be Brun and Sherry because he doesn't get to be happy a whole lot anymore. And another thing I find appealing about him is he goes through a lot of obstacles in life, like we all do. I mean, he has tried to mend things with them. He's tried to stay on good terms with them. That always seems to blow up in his face. This mainly blew up in his face because of his temper with Penguin. He was never able to really have the kind of relationship he wanted to have with Nightwing, in that he wanted them to be brothers. He wanted them to get along, or I think he did. He never hated Nightwing, but circumstances made it look that way. Um, he tries to have relationships, they don't always work out, either because of external forces or internal forces, and he always ends up alone eventually. But sometimes that's out of choice, and sometimes that's just out of the choice of the other people around him. It has nothing to do with him personally at times. Well, not completely, but yeah, he's not like a toxic individual who kind of ruins people who are around him, like Archer. Like Archer brings out the worst in people on the Archer animated series on I forget what channel that was on. Comedy Central for a while. You can still find it on Hulu. So he's not like that. He's not a narcissist. He's not toxic. He doesn't bring out the worst in people, as far as I know. He's just a well, he is a good person. He's a good person under a veneer of a lot of like rough edges. Is basically what I would say. If I had to compare the Red Hood to any character in comics or entertainment in general, the Punisher. He's just depending on the continuity and what they're doing with him at the time, he is like the Punisher of the DC universe. He is not afraid to use violence to get, I mean, more violence than most people are willing to do. Like, Batman's willing to maybe break an arm or two. Red Hood's willing to put a bullet in your head if he thinks you're not worth the trouble anymore, which I like. They're both were made by Jerry Conway. Both have no qualms about going to extremes to get the results they want. Both are traumatized men. Both have lost people they love. And both of them are looked down upon by the respective members of the universe they inhabit. I mean, there are some people who like the Punisher in that universe and show him some decency, but yeah, he's generally looked at as a crazy person. I think the same thing can be said of Red Hood. I always get the impression that the other heroes look at him as if he's crazy. I get this impression with the Bat family. They look at him as the black sheep of the family. And in some cases, I think Red Hood even looks at as himself as the black sheep. At himself as the black sheep. So yeah, they're both the black sheep of their respective universes. And yeah, they're both just badasses that I love to read about. Looking back on Red Hood, there are a lot of takeaways I found when I was thinking about this, but one of the main ones that I found when looking back on him is when you look at how unpopular he was in the beginning, back when he was first introduced, and when he died, and when he was voted to be killed off, he came back and became super popular. I think it's possible to salvage a bad character with enough time and creativity. Another one is edginess isn't so bad. Like, I like edginess. I like edgy characters. And when he first came back, Red Hood was kind of edgy in some of the things he did. Uh, no, recognize what your limitations are and consider moving past them, because Red Hood is someone that I think you shouldn't have limitations with. I mean, if DC wasn't so pussified, basically, and weren't afraid to do dark stuff again, or at least I think they're scared to do dark stuff, I think Red Hood would do some really dark stuff. Like, imagine Punisher in his darkest stories. I think Red Hood could work in that. Actually, I would like to see him in some really dark stories where he deals with sort of some of the worst of humanity. Because normally we either see him deal with muggers or criminals that he shoots who are shooting at him, or people with power and influence. We never see him deal with stuff like pedophiles and rapists. Like, the only time I heard about him dealing with one of those was back when he was still Robin with Philippe, the guy he may or may not have killed. Another thing was he sometimes came off as antisocial, but I don't think that means that your character can't have relationships and friends, because Red Hood always came off to me as he was a little antisocial, and then the personality disorder, in that he just struggled socially with some people. But you see him develop relationships and friends. Anti-heroes can work with layers and shades of morality. I do like it when there's a veneer to a character's depths. Like, there are many shades to a person. Like, this was something that was brought up once in the Old Republic, where the Sith Inquisitor has the option of saying, "Why is it always light and dark? There are many shades." Yeah, I think Red Hood definitely does fit that, and I think anti-heroes in general should have those layers to them, not just be edgy. I mean, they should be edgy, but not just for the sake of being edgy. There should be reasons to what they do and their own version of morality. Another thing is, we see Red Hood suffer losses from time to time. Like, he doesn't ever beat Batman. Batman usually beats him. No, always beats him. Both physically and, well, both literally and figuratively. Um, because it kind of just shows that your character's not invincible. He can be defeated. He can lose certain battles. I contrast this with certain characters in Marvel who are overpowered and they never suffer a loss. They just always win. Another one is provide obstacles and actual problems. Because I look at some of the problems that some of these characters in comics have now, and they are mundane compared to the stuff that Red Hood had to put up with. I mean, his mom died of an overdose. His dad was sent to jail, and he never saw him again. He had a shitty role model growing up, both in Batman and in his father. Well, his father and Batman weren't that shitty of role models. They were good people, but sometimes they kind of, I think, messed up with him. And he also died and has to live with the trauma of dying as a consequence of Batman allowing the Joker to get away with killing so many people and just sending him to jail only to escape. And Jason also has problems, like he has problems in his relationships. His relationships don't work out usually. They aren't always happy, I guess would be the term. We kind of saw this with Artemis, where they did acknowledge they had feelings for each other, but they decided not to have a relationship, which I think was stupid. But moving on, and another one is allow characters to be happy. This is something that I think manga does well. I mean, you have dark stories in manga, but you also have characters who find some form of happiness. You saw this in Tokyo Ghoul. You see this in, well, the Rise of the Shield Hero. That'll happen eventually. You see it in Blood Lad. You see some of that in Vinland Saga also, where they find a measure of happiness, although in Vinland Saga that might be short-lived. And with Red Hood, you don't see him get to be happy a whole lot. Like, he has friends, sure, but there's never really any moments where he seems happy. He just always seems miserable and brooding. Like, he's never known happiness a day in his life, which is bullshit because he has known happiness, but he's so, I don't know, his countenance always just comes off more as depressed and sad. Like, he's known nothing but misery since coming back to life, which is kind of true. He has had a hard time readjusting to life since he came back to life. And I would just like to see him be happy because that is something I hate about American comics is they have this idea that the hero should suffer. He should never be happy. I think they got this from Sam Raimi because apparently he came up with the idea that Ash has to suffer throughout the story, that the hero should suffer. Sometimes wonder if they stole that idea from him and ran with it. But yeah, those are the main takeaways for me at least. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you're a Red Hood fan, what is the appeal for you? Because I actually had to really put some thought into this. More than I have in the past 5 or 6 years. Usually it was just, I like Red Hood, I like Red Hood. I never really thought about why I liked him. And if you are a fan of Red Hood, I want to know why. What do you like about him? What's the appeal for you? Is there some stuff I missed? Did I add too much? Like anything you can think of, feel free to put in the comments. Have a nice day. And remember, the game was rigged from the start.